Victorum gaming fans and Hail Caesar fans, we're back with another faction review video. Today we're going to look at the Hittites, which basically covers roughly 16th through 12th centuries BC. So a really neat army, and has some tie-ins between a lot of the other sort of Middle Eastern Mesopotamian armies, but also if you want to go a little bit further west and deal with like Troy and the Mycenaeans and stuff like that. So there's a lot of cool history there that is covered, and they have a fairly well supported model range as well. So especially for Warlord, and then I think there's some other ones out there as well. So very similar to some of the other armies we've been looking at, like the Mitanni and the Babylonians. So chariots are 20% of your army at least, and then infantry at least 25%. You get your 1 unit of cavalry, and then the usual divisions at least 4+ there, and skirmishers can be up to half, but again, skirmishers don't count for the division sizes. So fairly typical there, but in comparison to some of the other recent armies, again, Babylonia and Hittites, and Mitanni, the Hittites do have access to a little bit more heavy-hitting infantry, which is really cool. So, and beyond that, just some other really cool specialist units. So, if we move on down here, what do we see? So, we have sort of this default infantry unit here, the Hittite, Hurrian, Syrian, or Arzawan medium infantry, long spears and shields. Again, pretty standard what we've seen lately here. Clash and sustained of 6, short range of 3/0, morale of 5 up, pretty solid, 26 points per unit. But then here we get some of the other cooler infantry that these guys have access to. So medium infantry with double-handed axes. You only get 1 unit of them. And they have a clash of 7, a little bit weaker on the sort of pseudo short range they get, but they're also tough fighters, and they actually cost 1 point less than the infantry above. You can give these guard units, or this guard unit, basically long spears instead of the double-handed axes. That does make them more expensive and does bump up your sort of pseudo short range there. So possibly worth it. You'll have to decide that on your own if you want to give up 1 clash die to have a little bit more of that short range, but also pay more for the unit. So next up, the Phoenician or Canaanite medium infantry with a mix of javelins and bows. So again, very solid combat there compared to other armies of the same period, and also gives you rock solid ranged. All that for 26 points is not a bad deal at all. You can then go here, the next one, this is a really cool one, the Lucca medium infantry warband. Has a clash of 8, so pretty dang good compared to the other things we've seen of the period. Usually tops out at 6, maybe the occasional unit with 7, so having that is pretty neat. Does drop down to 6 on sustained, does have a little bit of short range ability too, and all that for 24 points for the unit. You then have some Hurrian or Syrian light infantry archers. Doesn't say that they're a small unit, so that's why you get the really solid range stats there. 20 points a pop. Very good. The Habiro light infantry, mix of javelins and bows as small units, so solid points drop there for only really just a drop of 1 each on the ranged ability. Stamina drops, of course, because it's a small unit, but again, lots of ranged options here for the Hittites. And again, you got another similar one here. If you want to go sort of bargain basement ranged, Hoopshu light infantry, javelins and bows as small units. Same as the Habiro, but levy and 2 points cheaper there. Then you get into the skirmishers. Again, we've seen that so many times here over these last couple of lists. So javelins as small units, only 11 points a unit, and just the short range there, again, very weak in combat as you might expect. But you can then start adding upgrades here. So give them slings instead of javelins, so on only up to half of your units, and that does give you some solid ranged firepower of 2, only for 1 more point for the unit, so that's pretty cool. Or you can go the bow route, up to 1/4 of the skirmisher units, again, solid long range, also for just 1 point. So pretty neat there. Then the light chariots, again, also bring a lot of the muscle with a little bit of ranged. And clash of 8 is again pretty solid, and some of the best, well, the best morale saves for the list again. And you can upgrade 1 chariot unit to Marianu, which then brings in tough fighters for only 1 point more. So you certainly should be doing that. They have a little bit of short range ability again with the javelins, morale of 4, 28 points, and then +1 for the tough fighter upgrade. Very cool there. And then you get the chariot runners, as we've seen again with recent lists, just to buff out those units a little bit more. And then your one very light cavalry unit that has a little bit of ranged ability. So getting them to a good spot where they can either engage some other weak skirmisher units or just pile on again. The ranged firepower is pretty cool. And then you can, unlike the recent lists with your one cavalry unit, these guys can actually be upgraded to spear armed light cavalry, which does a couple things for you. So if we look, your clash goes up by 1, so does your sustain, so it's actually fairly respectable for a light unit. You lose the long range, but you get an extra on the short range, which is pretty neat. Morale stays the same. It's a small unit. With just the stamina of 4, and you only pay 2 points for that buff on the combat, so that does seem pretty worth it. You buff both of your combat stats, and sure, you lose the one ranged ability, but getting another one for short range seems pretty decent there. And again, as we've seen with a lot of the other sort of contemporary armies for these guys, leadership is 8 across the board. No other special abilities or anything there. 8 is again very solid and respectable. Would have been neat just because there were some famous Hittite kings to maybe see some of those represented here, but that's something you could maybe even house rule, or maybe if Hail Caesar gets some more love down the road, see that in the expansion. So if you guys found that video interesting, go ahead and leave us a like and a subscribe if you haven't already, and that does cover the Hittites for Hail Caesar, and we'll have more videos covering the various factions. Stay tuned.